We're going to be continuing in the 16th book of Israel. We're going to be doing chapter 13 today. Let's see. There we go. As far as it can go up. Okay. The Sea of Glass. You can see that. The 16th book of Israel. The Sea of Glass. We're going into chapter 13 today. And the title of the chapter is The Days Are Showing the Confusion and Wars. The House of Yahweh is showing the only way out. And there really is no other place. There's no other place that even understands the wars and why these wars are being brought, let alone to know the way out of them. As a matter of fact, as we'll see in this chapter, they believe and trust in these wars. We're going to start right in verse 1. There's something I want you to hear about what Pastor says about you. Shalom, everyone, he says. Wow! What a group. Coming down to the middle of the paragraph, he says, what a wonderful, wonderful group of people. He says, may the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. In verse 2, he says, a wonderful feast, the best I've ever seen. And that's what we want to help Pastor enjoy yet again. So let's see, why was that the best feast that Pastor had ever seen at that time? He says, a wonderful feast, the best I've ever seen. Yes, unity and workers. Workers. I've never seen so many people joyous about work. You see what our servitude does to Israel Hawkins? You see that joy that he has in us? And even part of, like we were just going over in workshops, you know, our high priest, you know, he watches us. He's emotionally bound to this beautiful place. And it's so beautiful to even think of ourselves as his bride and how he's bringing us fully out of God worship. It's just a tremendous class we just had. Pastor says it makes me think of when he was in college and he was so pleased because they gave him a job. And notice that job there, the job of cleaning toilets and kitchens. Oh boy, wonderful. That was the attitude he took with that job. And that's the attitude that we should take as well. But whatever job is necessary in Yahweh's great house. If you look over, I didn't give you all the page number, it was 137, but we're going over to page 138. And we're going to look down to verse 8 is where we're going to start. Pastor talks here about the Pope. And he says the Pope is asking for and trying to get enough votes to say that war is just. Now, sons of Israel Abel, I got a question for you. Is war just? No. Is war ever just? No. Okay. Is war ever right? No. Okay. Praise Yahweh. You're absolutely correct. No. He says the Supreme Court said that sodomy is just. So, sons of Israel Abel, is sodomy just? No, absolutely not. It destroys the family unit in many different ways. Let me finish the part here. He says, Isaiah says that there is no justice in the world today. Is that correct? I heard a couple of yeses. There is no justice in the world today. Isaiah 59, I think that is verse 15. You know, and those who turn to righteousness are considered mad. We're the ones they say are crazy. But there is no justice, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Pastor says it's all falsehood. It's all fairy tales. It's all for money. If you listen to the ones that are running for president at that time, you'll see them using these very words and accusing their opponents and so forth. You know, this is justice. They have a justice system. And I'm quite sure all of us at one time or another had to deal with that justice system. But I got an opportunity to deal with it in an interesting way many years ago, first coming to Yahweh's house. And that was going to be a volunteer to prison sent by the House of Yahweh, Great Conaniah. Again, he's the mule driver, the donkey driver. But he sent us into some prisons years ago. And I got to meet with these House of Yahweh men. And if you men do not know it, I think you do know it. But Yahweh has a great work in prisons. I'm telling you, he had more men of Yahweh in the very state that I live in that I even thought possible. More than this in this room. Right now. It was amazing, the men I got to meet at that time. And not just me, but some of you, there's still some here that even began with us many years ago. But what was interesting about that was that a lot of the men, though I was very green, very nervous, a lot of the men I was meeting, even House of Yahweh men, were telling me, no, man, I'm not guilty of what they said I was guilty of. I'm fighting my case. And you know, at first, I'm going to tell you that I fully wasn't trusting in Yahweh. I was thinking, well, I don't know, I guess these men probably are, just telling me another story. And I kept hearing it. I've at least out of 10 men. At least out of 10. And it wasn't something that I heard all the time, but I did notice over a period of time, and when I'm speaking now, it's back to at least 2003. Over a period of years, I noticed that a lot of these men were gone out of the system. And as I would ask the other inmates, what occurred with this gentleman or that gentleman? They would say, no, man, he beat his case. He's out. And I started hearing it again and again, and I started realizing, man, there are a lot of men that are actually incarcerated in prison that have no business being there at all. There is no real justice. Charges can be brought up, trumped up, if that's the word, and that's not a play on the president there at all. But before that, I don't know, I guess I thought it was something off of television. But after meeting real men who had no reason to tell me these things and watching them get out year in and year out, and it still continues. It still continues. I realized, wow, justice? There isn't any justice here. This system isn't about getting a man to pay his dues or whatever to society. So, as Pastor says here, there's no justice. That's in verse 8, in the world. And this sodomy that the Supreme Court is pushing. This sodomy it okays people committing acts that bring microorganisms into their body that will bring their bodies down, that they will pass on to others that will bring their bodies down, and then before long, we can't even produce families anymore. I mean, we're getting that bad in society. So, when Pastor makes these comments, in these sermons, there is a whole lot of wisdom, I know, behind them. And it's just amazing. If you think back to the Motions of Sin sermons, I think it was called many years ago. And that's what it talked about, taking things in our body and then mutating and so forth. And, these things living off our bodies that aren't supposed to even be in our bodies because we commit acts that are against Yahweh's beautiful law. Well, Pastor says here, this justice and all, it's all falsehood, and it's all fairy tales, and it's all for money. Verse 9, he says, but the Pope is warning this. For more than 1,500 years, the Catholic Church has promised just war. You can see now, I asked you earlier, was war ever just? And you all said no. At least I thought everyone said no. So you must be the ones that Yahweh is training to run his kingdom. You understand that. I don't think I've ever met a person in the world that understands that. One of the correctional officers at one of the prisons, I remember him stopping us one time before a Peaceful Solution class, and he asked, what are you guys teaching? And I just showed him the book, Peaceful Solution, Character Education class. He goes, oh, Peaceful Solution. Peaceful Solution. You know, there can't be peace without war. There's got to be some war. And, I didn't want to start anything with him because I wanted to get in there and train the men that were actually coming to be trained in it. So he was just there to open the gate for us, and he said his little comment, and we went in. But it's amazing to see that the people are already geared. The Catholic Church has done their job. They believe in war. You want to see a president's popularity go up? When he goes to war. You'll see his numbers rise. That's just how much you see that this nation believes in war. Continuing in verse 9, Pastor says, like it's justice to have war. It's like a theory as a way to determine in what causes a war can be considered morally justifiable. He says, in quoting from the popes that are dead, and during their crusades, they said, stop fighting each other and join us in this war, this just war. This is something that's been pushed for a long time. This is not something new, is what Pastor's getting over to us here. He continues and says, we'll kill them. We'll take all their wealth. We'll take them into slavery, and you can have your own slaves. We'll take their wealth, we'll divide it among us, and we'll have plenty of money and plenty of land to last us the rest of our lives. That's what it's about. It's not about justice. It's not about that at all. If you look over to page 139, at verse 18, Pastor says, but here in today's world and these drugs, now I would say young people, I want you to really focus on this, but it's all people. But this deception is rampant, and Satan has ways of making people think that breaking the law of Yahweh, as we should get to here, is acceptable. So he says, but here in today's world, and these drugs, he says, this is on all the news. They just don't understand why so many people are dying of this. The President Barack Obama made a point about this and said it's killing more than all the traffic accidents in the United States. Drugs. The people are killing themselves on drugs. This is their freedom. Their freedom. This is their freedom that they've got, Pastor says. I've heard reports of some who think they're looking for freedom by leaving Yahweh's house so they can go participate in whatever it is, drugs, alcohol, partying. Please consider, as the Peaceful Solution says, that every action leads to either a reward or a consequence. There is a ripple effect when you take a drug, whether you recognize it or not. It has an effect that may go far past that 5-minute or 10-minute or 20-minute or an hour high that you may get. Don't think it's a light thing. But This is their freedom, Pastor says. Their freedom that they've got. Freedom from the laws that shows them and teach them what Proverbs says. Now, Pastor mentioned this today. A child left unattended, he said it differently, but a child left unattended or untrained or untaught is an embarrassment to their parents. They'll kill themselves. Men of Yahweh, we must be very careful and guard our families and guard our children. Pastor talked about cell phones and internet, computers, whatever. If we leave our children unattended, Satan can have them getting high and you know nothing about it. Satan can have your daughters with boyfriends and girlfriends and you know nothing about it. They can be bringing microorganisms into their bodies that you never would want in their bodies, and you would know nothing about it. Man. They can be having abortions. I live in one state where they do. A child can have an abortion, and their parents have very little say-so in it at all. They can go to school, and the school can actually take them with a different relative other than the mother and father, and they can, and aunt is fine. And they can go have the abortion and come home to their parents that evening. Look it up. We must be careful. A child left unattended or untrained or untaught, they can kill themselves. That's what Pastor says. They'll kill themselves. They'll make themselves so sick, starting out even. If they're not taught, they'll be eating things that are unhealthy. If they're not taught, they'll be eating things unhealthy. They'll be committing acts that would come later in life. I would make a few comments there, but we're not all alone. But you men should know, because one of the things the medical society says, all men 40 and over need to go see their doctors, need to be checked. I'm not going to say much more than that. But I want you to think, what are all men out there doing? They're all performing the same acts. And that's why they all need to go see the doctors at a certain age to be checked for certain things. See, we're turning that. We're ending that sin. We're ending that curse. That ripple effect in Yahweh's house. We're training our children what actually does occur when we choose freedom from Yahweh's laws. And train your children to love it too, by the way. You know, put joy in it. Rejoice when you're teaching them. And don't worry if they don't grab it the first, second, or third, or fourth time. You'll do it however many times it takes to get it to finally sink in due time. It doesn't have to all get in the first day, the second day, the first month, or the second month. Just keep at it. Teach. Train up a child in the way he should go. Use repetition. Exercise. Pastor said that's how he was taught. His parents were very diligent. See how far I want to go here. Verse 19. Well, no, let me finish verse 18. It's so heavy here, everything. If they're not taught, they'll be eating things that are unhealthy. They'll be committing acts that will come later in life, drawn by illegal lust that are unhealthy. We have to teach them their illegal lust, or else they're going to be drawn by it. That are unhealthy, and they plant things in their bodies that will kill them at early ages. And Pastor gives an example here of his brother-in-law. I'll read it. It's too important. I had a brother-in-law, Pastor says in verse 19, who was 34 years old, and he was a coach right in the prime of his life. He was 34 years old and a coach in a famous school, teaching these young boys football or basketball or something. He went jogging down the road or down the street to the school and fell dead before he got to school. Yes, that's today's world. And you hear these kinds of things all the time in the news. Athlete drops dead on the field or whatever. Now, the world don't really understand what's taking place. They don't believe and trust in Yahweh's way. They don't believe that there's really a curse when Yahweh's law is broken. As a matter of fact, they don't want to hear Yahweh's law. Not even the Ten Commandments. Don't teach that in school. Put a Halloween mask on them, though, at a party. But don't you dare teach them not to steal. Beautiful, perfect laws. All we have to do is teach them. Got 7 minutes. Look over to page 140 at verse 22. At the top of the page here, Matthew 24:7, pastor says, he shows you that the sickness and disease epidemics, he shows you in verse 12 the reason for them. And the world won't believe it, but they're shown here. And it's because of iniquity, of doing away with the laws. If we do away with the laws of Yahweh in our houses, in our families' minds, then this is what's coming. The curse has come. Curse causes will not come. This was the Savior speaking. It's because of doing away with the laws that love grows cold. No, the parents don't understand why their children yell at them in the stores. It's because the law of Yahweh is done away with. It's very hard for the parents of the world to even correct their children. It's very difficult for them to discipline them without possible problems. Pastor says there is no love. Man will be lovers of themselves in this time period, as the apostle said. Look down to let me continue right there. Excuse me. Yeshua shows that this is going to be the worst time of trouble ever. In verses 22 through 23. In Revelation 6, 7, 8, and 9, it shows that the quartet and their activities in and around the great river Euphrates. And this is where it starts. After 1/3 of man is killed, they still won't repent. The Catholic Church has done such a fine job. The gods of this world has blinded the minds of the people that even when their own family members die in front of them with these just wars, they're still not going to return to the Holy Scriptures. They will not believe. But there are those Yahweh are saving that are going to believe. And that's the ones that are becoming here, brethren, that will be training. Look over to page 141 to verse 36, I believe it is. Let me see if I got that right. Yes. Pastor says here, toward the bottom of the page, you have the written word. Think of that as the scriptures now. Keep that in mind. Then you have the Pharisees' words that are not written. So they could change it. And they can say, no, I didn't mean that. Kind of with their own little renditions of what this or that law is supposed to mean, some type of audible law. No, I didn't mean that. No, that wasn't what this rabbi meant when he said this. Well, what did he mean, Pastor says? Well, they'll interpret it to mean something else. The pastor says, see, you have the written word that is written. It is stationary. It is foundational. It is written, Pastor says, and I want to emphasize there, it is flawless. It's beautiful. It brings peace, joy, and love when all we have to do is be trained in it and live by it. If we don't train in it and don't live by it, our world will be just as it is today. But there is a special group that is training in it and living by it. And they're right here. And there are those across the world as well. Many across the world. You hear the numbers of the people that are checking the House of Yahweh articles out now. That is tremendous. I still can't bring up anything religious at work. You're not supposed to talk about that here. I hear it all the time. But yet there are still millions of people running to the House of Yahweh articles. Yahweh is doing his work. He's fulfilling his plan. Page 142. Look at verse 38. We got a couple minutes here. Yahweh will save his people from their sins. He's going to save his people. Well, who are his people? Those who choose to be his people and make themselves into Yahweh's likeness and into Yahweh's image. So it isn't an empty prayer of Yahweh, Father Yahweh, please make us into your likeness, into your image. That's what I want to be. I have to work at it. I have to push myself at it. And we're constantly being reminded of that right here from this podium. Okay? Those, and I'm going to read that again, those who choose to be his people and make themselves into Yahweh's likeness and into Yahweh's image. And that's by being obedient to the instructions that come forth from the house of Yahweh at Abel. That's how it's done. Oh, it can't be that simple. You don't know what you're saying. That's what Yahweh says. Be obedient. You'll make mistakes. Be obedient. And then he's going to say, job well done. And you're going to get better. You're going to, just like riding those old bicycles, we used to scrape our knees and knuckles. We got back on that bicycle and we learned how to ride that thing so well. We could lift the front wheel up in the air and spin it around. And that's how Yahweh wants us with his laws. Not playing with his laws, but knowing them so well. Knowing and trusting in them so well, we'll never eat anything unclean. I just have to fast then. Yes, I'm hungry and starving, but no, I know what's going to occur if I do eat something that is unclean. And on page 143, I'll just read this. On verse 45, in closing, how righteous and how pleasant it is for brothers to dwell together in unity. Pastor says, one person, just one person getting out of unity, not willing to keep Yahweh's laws, not willing to do Yahweh's work, not willing to be a part of it, just getting out of line, it can cause an upset. So men, if you all please stand. I want to remind you that after law class, we'll be doing the feast registration cards. You men can see me in the rear of the sanctuary. Yahweh willing, we'll all come to the registration booth at the beginning of the feast, before the feast. We can all get in line and in unity, and none of us will have to stand in real long lines. At this time, I have a great honor to turn this podium over to a great mighty priest of Yahweh, the great Kohen Shamil Bashard Hawkins. Just to remind him of the word. You don't have to.
Shabbat Shalom, you may be seated. I'll continue. I'm going to start off in the same chapter 13, verse 54. Running a kingdom, running a city, and trying to get unity in the city in one department, like the police department, is hard. It's hard trying to keep unity in the police department with all the policemen wanting to go their own way. Some are wanting to kill, some are wanting not to kill, and some are wanting not to wear guns. There's no unity in the police departments. There's no unity in City Hall. You can hire the best, high-priced city manager there is. He still has trouble. He goes before the board of directors and says, I'm having this problem, and this is the way I'd like to deal with it. Then they have to approve what he wants to do. Most of the time, they just point out the drawbacks and say, this is not going to work. There's no answer to this problem. We need to realize, and should realize, and I brought this up a little earlier this afternoon, we're all in training because we do have the answers to all of their problems. We have to realize that we're being trained to be managers of people. These people are struggling trying to find solutions to their problems because nobody sees the same problem. Everybody, you can ask 10 people on the street, 100 people on the street, what the problems of their city is, and everybody will have a different answer. We have one answer. We're all striving for the same thing, to put sin down, to no longer allow it to take place. That keeps us single-mindedly looking for everything beneficial for everyone and nothing harmful for anyone. So this unity that we're building, it begins with an agreement. And you can go all the way back to the vow we made at baptism. It's agreement. We are in agreement with the plan of Yahweh. So we have the ability to stay focused on that part of the plan. Every solution to every one of the issues that we will confront soon, and probably are confronting now, is going to require agreement. Submission is another word that the world doesn't like that fits with this. We can agree with Yahweh that this is the best thing for mankind. But if we're not submissive to it ourselves, how can we ever expect to teach that or to train others? Pastor mentioned those that are coming are going to be, that 2 billion are going to be who we train to be helpers for us to bring this same plan of unity into all creation. So we always have to remember what's in it for me. When you're instructing someone, training someone, teaching someone, you have to let them know what benefit all of what you're teaching them is for them. If you remember the old, I'll call them purple, but they were really more like a mauve, a plum color, the big law books. They had the benefits and the curses for keeping or not keeping the laws. And everybody has to buy in. We have to buy in that this plan that Pastor's been teaching us all these years is the only answer to all of the world's problems. We have to own it. We have to buy into it and own it and teach it like it's ours. And I guess one of the last pieces of being able to deal with all of those people and to be able to have the solutions and be able to express those solutions to others is to realize, help each other realize how what each of them does impacts our own life. Because everybody's job impacts someone's life very positively. The world is in it for themselves. The assistant chief wants to be the chief. The The Indian over here wants to be one of the managers, wants to be one of the other chiefs. Part of the problem in the world today is there's too many chiefs and not enough Indians. And forgive me if that's politically incorrect. Yahweh willing, you get the point. Too many people want to come right out of school and be the supervisor. No experience, no nothing, just right out of school want a $175,000 salary. There's no reality. Everything we've been taught and everything we're going to teach is real. It's real life. They live in la-la land. Nobody has any concern or care about how anyone else's life is impacted by what they think, by what they practice. They could care less. Oh, if it's in their bedroom, it's behind closed doors, I don't care. That doesn't show any love. It doesn't show any respect. It doesn't show any concern for others. That's what makes all of us so different. We may hurt each other's feelings from time to time, but it's not near as bad as what the world does to you. And when the next session of confessions comes up, I would venture that everyone who's offended or hurt a brother has confessed that. All of the problems in the schools, looking at verse 55, all of the problems in the schools, all derive, they come from what those children are being taught in the school, and what their parents were taught, and what their parents were taught. And it just keeps going down and down. We wonder why there's mass shootings. We wonder why there's such a high rate in suicides. They have no hope. They can't trust anything. Sunlight gives you cancer. Oh no, we were wrong. Sunlight's beneficial for you. But not too much, and you got to wear this sunscreen, which next week they come out and tell you that the sunscreen causes cancer worse than the sun did. They have no hope. They have nowhere to go to find out the truth. And the news media keeps everybody so agitated. Everything is a crisis. It keeps people so agitated and aggravated, nobody cares anymore. They don't have answers because they're so deceived they don't even realize that the very life that they live is the problem. Suicide is a problem, but it's a symptom. Suicide isn't the solution or the end result of something. It's a symptom of the problem. You can spend billions of dollars trying to combat and turn around the suicide rate, and you will fail all day, every day. Because that's not the problem. That was that person's solution to get out of the hell that they're living in. We need to think unity. Think about these laws. These laws keep us from ever thinking about suicide. That's never a solution to a problem or a situation. Just like war is not going to solve the problems, even if they didn't use nuclear weapons. When has a fist fight ever brought peace? It never has and it never will. It can't. It's against the law of Yahweh. And if it's against the law of Yahweh, we know it belongs to Satan, and she can't win. That's our job. To spread that part of the message, to spread that hope, that reality that life can be peaceful. and it is to be enjoyed. And you shouldn't have to worry about locking your doors, putting bars over your windows, having police patrol your neighborhood. Where's the peace in that? And what's the problem? They don't keep the law. And they're not interested enough yet, Yahweh hadn't called them, to know that. But we have been blessed with that knowledge. It's a great knowledge. It's the greatest knowledge you could ever receive. Don't look down on it. Don't put the law down. It's what strengthens each one of us. If it strengthens Yahweh, it darn sure can strengthen me. You have the answers. They're in all of the books Pastor's written, if we read them. They're taught in all of the classes here, if we attend. They're taught in all the sermons, if we're on time, and if we have our minds set properly. How can I benefit others by being in class or in services or at the feast? Unity doesn't come from looking for what's in it for you, for me, as an individual. Unity comes from wanting to help, to be of benefit to each other. Remember, Pastor taught us in our prayers, don't spend a lot of time on yourself in your prayers. Pray for others. Pray for the work. Pray for those that are coming, that a way would be made. If we're busy praying for others, and others are praying for us, we're covered. We'll be well taken care of. 50, 100, 300 prayers for each other every day has to work better than my lowly little prayer once or twice a day for myself. Take the time to think, not like the schools of the world taught us how to think, which really doesn't work. Think like Yahweh thinks. And Pastor teaches us that every time he speaks, every time he writes, every time any priest gets up and teaches you, any time you're ever taught anything in the house of Yahweh, that's what we're being taught. Yeshua spoke in parables and showed all sorts of things about the kingdom. That might be a great assignment. You might go back and look up a couple of those parables that Yeshua spoke about the kingdom and see how you can help build, how each one of us can help build the kingdom the way Yeshua pointed out for us. Dwelling in unity, being in unity, is the only way anything can ever have peace. It's the only way that makes life pleasant. Our words can truly hurt one another. I've probably used this example before, but I'm going to use it again. I like it. So you'll just have to bear with me. If you want to kiss, we'll keep it righteous. We're married. You want to kiss. You go to your wife and you tell her her face would stop a clock. Do you think that's going to get you a kiss? But if you look her in the eyes and you say, "Sweetie, time just stands still when I look into your eyes," you'll probably get a little peck on the cheek at least. It's the same thing with us. It's the same thing with each one of us. I may not want you to give me a kiss, but why can't we treat one another the way that we're supposed to? And I see the growth. In the time that I've been here, there's so much growth, it's unbelievable. You could have told me this years ago and I'd have never believed. See, this part of us, this unity, we started out believing without seeing. We can now see and believe even greater because we see how we act and react with one another. It's amazing the change in each one of us, from the youngest to the oldest. And every time we don't act in ways that brings unity, it diminishes not only our strength, but the strength of those who heard and will be affected later on by what we said or did. It diminishes, it reduces our strength as a body. Remember I said earlier on, think about how you impact someone else's life. You grumble, mumble, murmur about a brother, you harmed yourself. Along with a lot of other laws that are broken, you stole from your brother, you've harmed him in a lot of ways. And you can say, I hate you in a lot more ways than with those 3 words. You can do it with the look on your face, with your body language, the amount of respect you show or don't show. And don't let the way the world teaches, well, you got to earn my respect. Peaceful Solutions shows us, teaches us the benefits, how to impact someone else's life because we show respect first. And when they do something that the world would say, well, you lost my respect, we forgive them and move on to the next task. You have the answers to all of the problems the world is suffering from. What you know right now would stop the war that may be taking place very soon with North Korea. With what you know now, you could stop nuclear war. And you don't think you're anybody special? Of course you are. The bride of Messiah, the sons of Yahweh, those aren't just words. Those are positions, they're offices. You have that power in your mind and in your heart and everywhere in your body right now. It's not perfected yet. I understand that. We should all understand that. But it's more of you now than it ever has been before. You got more of that perfection in you today than you had yesterday and last week and last month and last year. I'm going to mention another word. It generally makes guys cringe. But I'm going to suggest you consider it. Allow yourself to become vulnerable at times in the presence of your brothers. It's what builds a relationship. I'll let you think about that one for a little while. No, we're to love our neighbor as ourselves. If we're to love Yahweh with our whole heart, soul, and might, does that mean we don't have to love our brothers as much? And we love Yahweh and we follow Yahweh. We don't love our brothers and follow except in righteousness. You are the best brothers anyone could ever have. There are no better brothers in the world. Not in the past, not in the future. There are no better brothers than you. And we get to call Yeshua our brother. And He calls us brother. We might want to spend a bit more time thinking of our brother, our neighbor, as Yeshua, and not whoever it may be. Isn't that what we're all striving to be? Well, let's lift one another up so we can pick up the pace. I've heard a lot of prayers, let the waters come. That always gives me the creeps. I don't know if I'm ready. Yahweh's been so merciful since 2006. He's still waiting on me to get my stuff together. If we pick up the pace, start looking for things that we can do as individual men to pick up that pace. Help your neighbor, help our brothers become more perfect, and don't worry about yourself. Let me rephrase that. Worry about yourself, but think more of them at that moment than yourself. And allow them to do it, because guys have a tough time accepting a compliment. And that's what encouragement is. Learn how to accept that encouragement. Learn how to give that encouragement. Every day. Every opportunity you get. You can look throughout the whole book of Yahweh. Yahweh's prophets were persecuted. And every one of them were in agreement. Doesn't matter what generation they lived in, they were all in agreement and they were all persecuted. So are we. We're in great company. They're our brothers too. And when they're resurrected, when we do get that power and that authority and command, the word to go resurrect them, we'll get to teach them too. Because they only had parts and pieces. And this era has all of the plan. That's not a little thing. Unity. I thank Yahweh that all of the bugs that make up my eyeballs and every part of my eyeballs that lets me see, I praise Yahweh those bugs are in unity. One of those little bugs didn't crawl up my nose and now I can't see. We're a body, the body of Messiah. Every one of us is a part of that body. We should act like the microorganisms, in unison, in unity. One body. Not what's in it for me, not what's in it for you. How can we benefit the next generation? How can we benefit the 2 billion? Or anyone else? Pastor told us about each of the prophets and the apostles wrote a part, a piece of the plan. It is so awesome that we get to see all of the writings. And I know there's people that say, oh, well, there's some missing, and you know, all the Oshkosh Code wouldn't work if there was some missing, would it? There's even unity in the scriptures and the way that they're placed in the book. When we say to Yahweh that He is our refuge and our fortress, if we stop to think about it, this is verse 91, if we stop to think about it, brethren, there is no safe place on earth right now. You could be anywhere and get killed, even at a concert, even in an airplane. Unless Yahweh protects you, there's no assurance without Yahweh. There is no assurance without Yahweh. And aren't we Yahweh to one another? Shouldn't we be taking a little bit of time to let our brothers know that we will protect them? And we appreciate each of them protecting us? Verse 105, to finish this up. Pastor says the sincerity that you put in this is what matters. And Yahweh knows your heart. Remember this. Yahweh knows the heart. Nothing gets by him, as Yeshua showed in his instructions to the apostles. Nothing gets by Yahweh. He knows everything about you, everything you do, what's in your heart, what you're thinking, and even how many hairs are on your head. So he knows. You're being judged and sentenced by those things that are in your heart, that come forth by your tongue, come forth from your mouth, and come forth from your actions. It's up to each one of us. I may step on your toe, but I can't not make you mad because I stepped on your toe. You have to choose to be mad. You have to choose to be hurt by something someone says. What they say doesn't hurt you. Yahweh didn't make a mistake when he called any of us into his house. We were chosen a long time ago. There was no mistakes made. We're a family being built into a family. A stronger family there will never be. Yahweh willing, that's an awful lot to rejoice about. A lot to rejoice about.